Hello, everyone. I'm Galit Solomon. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications with Canadian Associates of Ben-Gurion University, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to a brand new series that we're calling Coffee with Our Researchers. Ben-Gurion University, also known as BGU, is a research university, and so in each segment of this series, what we're going to do is we'll be highlighting a topic that's coming out of BGU that is making headlines, beginning today. And I'd like to introduce Simon Ben-Simon, our Executive Director for Montreal and Ottawa, to introduce you to today's topic. Simon?
Thank you, Galit. Good morning, Orit, and I have my coffee ready. I hope you do too. I'll just take a little bit of a sip. So let me introduce you to our listeners. Orit Wakni-Nyekuteli is a researcher of modern Morocco and a lecturer at the Department of Middle East Studies at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. She is the chair of the Chaim Herzog Center for Middle East Studies and Diplomacy and the chair of the BGU Fund for the Research of North African Jewry. She is a co-founder of My Heart is in the West, Bladna, and the Forum for the Study of Jews and Christians in Muslim Cultures. Her research deals with colonialism, labor history, and the Vichy period in Morocco. She also deals with the history of Moroccan Jewry and the historiography about them in Morocco and in the various diasporas, touching upon issues of memory, cultural production, and the relevance of these intergroup and interreligion relationships. So Orit, as you know, BGU and Morocco have been in the news a lot. Actually, the BGU president, Professor Daniel Chamovitz, is just back from a few days in Marrakesh, developing a relationship with Polytechnique in Morocco. And we also have memorandums of understanding, relationships being established with other Moroccan universities. And this as a product of the Abraham Accords and the peace process with the Kingdom of Morocco. So we're thrilled to have you and to have this conversation. So before we go into the relationship between BGU and Morocco, tell us a little bit more about your research, your area of expertise, and what you're involved with today.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you, Galit. Good morning to you all. So I will describe my fields of interest in general, and then I will give some examples, and it will allow us to see how these new and exciting agreements are in service, not just of my own research, but for BGU interest in North African Jewry in general. So I'm interested in the history and historiography of Moroccan Jews, on the one hand, as something totally embedded in the general Moroccan history, and on the other hand, its relations with the largest studies of the history of Jews. So what makes Moroccan Jewry so special in this junction of memories, history, and current political interest in its history? So those are questions that are that interest me. So I can say that I study at the same time as I study Moroccan Jewry on two levels. One is the level of their history, the actual history, which is never depart from its historiography, and on the another level, I try to understand the question that shaped our knowledge about Moroccan Jewry. So what were the processes in which we arrived into this point where there's so much interest all over the world, in the Anglophone world, in the Francophone world, which it was traditionally interested even more than in Israel, and after the Anglophone world, and then in Morocco itself, where we can find a lot of new research about the Jews. And another topic that I'm trying to study through Moroccan Jewry, because I think that Moroccan Jewry put a focus on very important and global issues of identity, of belonging, of what a homeland is. So it's in the center of larger questions that we can look at through the story and history of Moroccan Jews. And so I'm trying to look at the idea of diaspora and how it was studied in different diaspora. So if we can think about the departure of the Jews from Morocco to other countries, to America, the Americas, to Europe, to France, and so on, and to Israel, their historiography, the knowledge, the epistemology was also divided into pieces. Linguistic pieces where in different countries historians, anthropologists are using different languages to study Moroccan Jews. And then there was a kind of separation that it was abnormal to the history that was much more coherent and much more, history is never coherent, it's not coherent by terms of peaceful history, but in terms of the idea of belonging to the same homeland. And then we can find people studying it from a Judeo-centric point of view or Israelo-centric point of view, and the Moroccan have their own interest in the subject, and the European and the Americans are studying the Jews through their own point of view. So I'm trying to see the relationship between the actual diasporas and the research about the diaspora, and also it's very innovative for Israelis to think about Moroccan Jews in Israel as a Moroccan diaspora rather than a da or community within the Israeli society. So
that's fascinating, because you're a child of Moroccan Jewish immigrants. I'm a child of Moroccan Jewish immigrants in two different diasporas in two different countries with very different ways of seeing our history. But I want to get a little bit more, maybe not personal, but what is the significance for you as, again, a child of Jewish Moroccan immigrants to Israel, the peace process, the peace accords between Morocco and Israel?
I think that thinking about myself or my family history and my academic biography, it seems like everything just gathered into this moment of the peace accord. But it's a long process that culminated in something formal. And what is interesting about this agreement, that it started long time ago, I think for at least 15 years. It didn't come as a surprise for me, because the interest that we encounter in Morocco on the history, the heritage, and even the well-being of the Jews in different places around the world started the all connection. So the connection is really, and Morocco stress, the Moroccan discourse really stress the idea that this peace agreement is very natural because of the strong connections between their Jewish diaspora and the diaspora's ex-homeland. So it's through the study of the Jews that this peace process and academic contact were becoming formal and a very deep and ongoing process of rapprochement between communities first, but also government later on. And I must say that in Morocco, it was always supported by the Makhzan, or by the palace. And as if I'm looking more at the personal aspects. So I've not enough words to describe the excitement that my parents had once the agreement. They traveled to Morocco many times. It wasn't Israelis traveled to Morocco. Israel arrived in Morocco since the 90s. Right. We had some informal academic and other connection, and of course also in the economy and other realms, Morocco and Israel had informal connections. But the formal idea of this, something that will gap this sense of a lost homeland that people remembered, told, longed for many years. It became, as paradoxical, Morocco became the exile. The people were almost exiled from their homeland, Morocco, into Israel. So, and there was allegedly contradictions between being part of the Israeli nest and Zionism and being a Moroccan patriot or love and your ex-homeland. It's not unique to the Moroccan experience. We know it from other Jewish communities in Israel and the diaspora. But there is something unique about Moroccan in those feeling of love towards the ex-homeland. And once they could ease themselves and say, okay, now we are relaxed because our both homeland are in relationship. Our both homeland are in contact to give us a better and more a whole sense of belonging. And I think this is part of the diasporic turn. It has to do with the ability of people to travel, to go back to the ex-homeland, and to reimagine it. It enables something really, really important, because this detachment was not only from the ex-homeland. This detachment was also from the younger generations, because they couldn't imagine their parents or grandparents Morocco.
Right.
And now when they can easily travel to Morocco, have contacts with Moroccans that it already started before the agreement. They are very happy. Just before the agreement, there were strong signs of it in when there was I don't want to get into the politics of the Western Sahara and the debate about the Western Sahara, but it was amazing because Moroccan Jews in Ashdod demonstrated in support of the Moroccan government in the conflict in the Western Sahara. So this kind of be able in this crazy world to be, while patriotism is something that belong to one homeland and to be totally devoted to her, now we can see more and more phenomena when people can belong, like before the nationalism, can belong to different identities at the same time.
That's it's fascinating, and probably it's quite unique. Maybe the other parallel that I could think of in Israel are the Olim from the United States that have this attachment, but there was never any kind of conflict between America and Israel. So you are not the only one at BGU in your department researching the Moroccan Jewish experience and the history and sociology. Can you tell us what your other colleagues and what are they doing briefly in terms of, because you're a whole team and BGU is very well positioned in Israel to lead this relationship with Morocco?
Thank you for this question, and I think that in the last few years there was a revival in the study of North African Jews, not just from a rabbinical or a very Jewish point of view, but rather as part of the Moroccan history, as part of Jewish history, and the Ben Simchon Foundation that was founded 5 years ago at BGU, and at creating BGU a hub for a new and innovative research about North African Jewry. And me and my colleague had a flood of students interested in the subject. and I will describe some of them. So in the anthropology department, Andre Levy is studying also question of diaspora and the question of the movement between Morocco, Israel, and other diasporas. Aviad Moreno studied the networks between the Americas and Morocco and different. So what we can see about the three of us, for example, that same questions that are shaped by the politics of our era. So how it's not that we decided to study diaspora, for example, but those questions really intrigued us because of us being second or third generation, because of us asking about question about immigration that maybe previous generations that were so occupied in becoming part of Israeli society didn't have the time or had a question that they thought of them being more urgent to study. So we have a group in our department, we call it My Heart is in the Maghreb, Libi B'Ma'arav, which echoes Yehuda Halevi saying about a poem about my heart is in the West, I'm in the West, but my heart is in the East. So we kind of played on this idea, and we said our heart is in the West, and West it's in Hebrew it's Ma'arav, and Maghreb it's the North Africa, and we have a Moroccan student from Morocco that studied the identity of second and third generation of Moroccan immigrants, both in Israel, in France, and those who stayed in Morocco. Meital Abu-Kassif, she's a filmmaker, excellent filmmaker, and she's very occupied with those questions of identity and the movement between Israel and Morocco, and how it was expressed through artistic production and cinema. Another student studied the shrine, different Tunisian shrines and the worship of shrines and their memory in Tunisia and Israel and so on. So I can maybe summarize it by saying that we are in a very unique moment where we have things happening like the Abrahamic Accords and the interest of the third generation to reconstruct something that they lost in terms of research. And always we can look at the academia as part of the general culture. So we see this renaissance all over in theater, theater in Darija, in the colloquial Moroccan, that popped up like all over the country, and music and orchestras and Moroccan orchestra or North African orchestra. So there is a kind of a moment that historians maybe later on could explain this uniqueness of the moment that we are in.
It's very interesting because it comes at a time also where in Israel there is a lot of questioning about and reconciling itself with the treatment of the Moroccan immigrants to Israel and certain policies. A number of controversial documentaries have come out recently. In your estimation, and you started speaking to a little bit about this, what will it do within Israeli society to bridge the gap between Ashkenazim, Sfaradim, Mizrahim, and the more the veteran community? How will this help in bridging those gaps?
Thank you for the question. I think that another moment that shapes our thinking about Moroccan Jewry and the Israeli society, which is global. All those phenomena are global with the uniqueness of the Israeli society, the Moroccan community within the Israeli society, is the, we may call it the multicultural turn, where instead of thinking that or adhering to the idea of the melting pot, where everyone had to become Israeli, and Israeliness was something very defined, very specific, people realized, both in academia and in the political thinking and in social sciences and in the cultural production, that our ability to become a whole is dependent on our ability to be fully embedded in our cultures of origin, to become part of it, to acknowledge it, and, or in other words, I couldn't become fully Israeli unless or before I accepted my cultural heritage, my specific Jewish heritage, both in terms of traditionalism that was typical to the Jewish way of the Sephardi or the North African Jews, and other cultural aspects, but not only cultural aspects, but also the way to respect the way we perceive the world, to respect the way we see the others, not to remain the people that Ashkenazi are looking at, but rather to be the one that look at themselves and on the others, not in order to be apart, but in order to become one. And so it's also how we can discuss the philosophical approach of the Mizrahi Jews in order to create a better Israeli society. So I think that there are, and one of the things that helped Moroccan to be more apparent in the public scene was surprisingly tourism, because many Ashkenazi Jews that many of them had more resources at the beginning to travel, arrived in Morocco and were amazed by the country and was charmed by its landscapes and by the Moroccans, and they're such an amazing welcoming that they received, because Moroccans saw that they are Moroccan Jews, because for them all the Jews for some of course are Moroccans, and they brought it back, and Moroccans from the second and third generation started to feel that something was missing all the time, and also to be more proud of our cultural heritage and our cultural abilities. And little by little, it became more prominent in the cultural scene in Israel. And started. It's always easy to start with music, for example, but and then because the idea of studying culture, or the interest in studying culture, is both it's a good thing, but also it is sometimes take our look from more problematic, take away our focus on more problematic issues such economy, inequality. So those are all questions that we still deal with, but I think that all the Abrahamic Accord in large, or I would say it's also a reconcile between our Arabness and our Jewishness in deeper sense of the idea of Arabness.
Let's one more question, and then we'll close it off. So we spoke a lot about the impact on Israel, and let's talk a little bit about the impact on Morocco. You know, we can understand the impact of trade and economic relationships and diplomatic relationships, and what Israel is able, in terms of expertise, is able to bring to Morocco in terms of agriculture and high tech and all these things. But the Kingdom of Morocco is doing a lot to preserve Jewish heritage in Morocco, opening cultural centers, opening museums, teaching, incorporating the Shoah in Moroccan curriculum in the schools. How do you evaluate, or how do you analyze this this movement in Morocco, and why is it so important for the Moroccans to do that?
And thank you for the question. We can be amazed by the amount and quality of research on Moroccan jewelry in many universities. So I can mention Jama' Baida, Muhammad Kanbib, and others that started it and began a process where Kanbib did it a long time ago, and Jama' Baida, and Muhammad Hattami, and others. And their interest was from a genuine place where they said that we need a revolution in the way we study history. We cannot study history where a huge part of our history is missing from textbook, the way we teach at universities. But the idea of studying Jews was we are bringing back, like we want to bring back the Moroccan diaspora, we bring back the knowledge of our Jewish diaspora. It belongs to us. It belongs to our history. And this is a very, very prominent idea, not just in the academia, but also in cultural production, in the public discourse, which changed rapidly after the agreement. So for Morocco, there were many reasons to stress its Jewish heritage. We can be cynical and to talk about strategies, which is always in politics truth, where Morocco wanted to belong to the Arab country that are supported by the United States, and the Jewish question was important and was part of it. And also to help themselves with political, more complicated political questions such as the Western Sahara. We can look at all of this strategy, and I hear a lot of this kind of explanation. But my answer to this explanation is that there needed to be something there. There needed to be an historical experience that allowed to the Moroccan to take it and to use it to different purposes. So it's not that they invented the idea of the Moroccan Jews being part of the Moroccan society. It was there, but different politics and different change in the discourse, the general discourse, the global discourse, allow them to express it louder and to be more brave to talk about Moroccan Jews, where in other countries scholars were really shy. So Morocco led this. Now it's all over the Arab. We hear about Iraqi Muslims that are calling back to the study of Iraqi Jews in their curriculums. In Egypt, of course, my colleague in our department, Yora Metal, is doing same research in Egypt with Yug Nizad, the founder. Henriette Da'an-Kalev in our university, she is both an activist and a very prominent and very important scholar on the sociology of Mizrahim in Israel, and she met scholars from Morocco. She met Moroccans, and it was a change in the way we all thought about our own research and our own work. Because there was a point where Moroccan produced more research about Moroccan Jews than Israeli Americans or French.
Wow, great. Orit, this was fantastic. Thank you so much. We will post this on our YouTube channel, on our website, on our social media, and I hope people enjoy it. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And Simon and Orit, I would like to thank both of you as well. It's a fascinating and insightful chat, and I'm sure our viewers will take a lot away from it. And to our viewers, we do hope that you enjoyed our coffee date today. If you would like to learn more about the work and the research that's being done at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, please be sure to visit our website. We're at www.bengurion.ca. That's www.bengurion.ca. And while you're on our website, you will be prompted to sign up for our newsletter. Please do so. And you can also follow us on our social media. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next coffee with our researchers. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.